So, as a political scientist, see one system better than the other. How do you see the first past the post system in India?
In 1998, when Vajpayee government fell by one vote, everybody thought maybe the Congress will now come to power. But the president decided to dissolve the Lok Sabha. And this is what changed the election cycles.
Where do you see this hot debated?
Strength of Indian democracy is the fact that no party in India can take. The Congress lost the Haryana election because of overconfidence. Whole plank was anti-corruption as an alternative to mainstream politics. That's what Arvind Kejriwal said we were. And can we really touch our heart and say it was an alternative to mainstream politics, or was it an alternative within mainstream?
Where do you think the current education system is in India?
It's quite an embarrassing question, which I asked myself also. Who is this education for? One of my students once asked an American professor a question. Is attendance compulsory in your class? Today, people very often do their higher education to postpone their unemployment.
So, Sandeep sir, thank you for coming on the show. I'm Rishi, the host of Indic Diaries, and it's great to have you.
My pleasure too.
Yeah, Sandeep sir, my first question is about given that we essentially started in 47 with a one nation, one election, let's say. Where do you see this hot debated topic that is currently going on about one nation, one election? And I had two aspects on that. Is it politically, like numerically possible that the BJP is able to push it? And are you in favor of the general bill of one nation, one election?
You see, as you very rightly said in 1952, when we inaugurated our electoral democracy after independence, we did have simultaneous Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha elections. And this by and large continued till the third general election of 1962. Now, why did we miss out on a common cycle? It was because after 1962, many state assemblies got dissolved because governments could not complete their 5-year term and nobody else could form the government. So governors dissolved the assembly and called for fresh elections. And this started happening after 1962. And this is what changed the election cycles. Lok Sabha having one election cycle and Vidhan Sabhas in different states having different election cycles. Now, I have argued you could think of another system, especially given that we are an election only democracy and the right to vote is an important vote for citizens. And should we get them to exercise it only once in 5 years? What happens in the other 4 years, 11 months? Uh, my alternative is every 5 years you fix the Lok Sabha election, every 5 years. And in the third year of that 5-year cycle, have all Vidhan Sabha elections together across the country. So I'm just taking an example. Suppose 2030 is the Lok Sabha election. Let 2033 be the Vidhan Sabha elections and local body elections. And then 2035 will be Lok Sabha election. And then 2038 will be Vidhan Sabha and local body elections. So you'll have elections only twice in 5 years. Once for the Lok Sabha, once for all Vidhan Sabhas, where you are respecting the fact that there are two different types of verdicts, and you are giving an opportunity to the voter to exercise his or her franchise twice in a 5-year period.
But what happens if the government falls, both the state and the general?
Now, there is a German system which is followed, which is called constructive vote of confidence, which is once you have a election and a government is installed, you cannot replace that government for that 5 years until you prove on the floor of the house that an alternative has a majority. You see, like if you remember, I don't know if you were a very, very young man then, in 1998, when Vajpayee government fell by one vote, they lost the confidence motion by one vote. Everybody thought maybe the Congress will now come to power. But the president decided to dissolve the Lok Sabha. Now, a lot of people feel if members of parliament knew that the Lok Sabha is going to be dissolved, they would not have prevented the government from falling. But it was just 1 year old. So, under that system, a government does not go out of power until the House chooses an alternative government. So it has to be a vote of confidence for somebody, which is a vote of no confidence for somebody.
Gotcha.
Between 1991 and 1994, Narsimha Rao's government was called a minority government.
Yes.
That's because they didn't have a majority, but they did not fall. That's why they continued. And why did they not fall? All the other parties which were there did not come together to bring down the Congress government.
Got it.
If BJP voted against, the left parties walked out of the house. If left parties voted against, BJP walked out of the house. So the government never fell, though it did not have a majority. When the opposition got together to get the government to fall, the Congress managed to get the Janata Dal divided and got those many members to their side and managed a majority.
But sir, again, so again, I was not born in 1998. I was, so it's unfortunate, but there's a dichotomy
So it's
here.
fortunate you are a new generation man.
Okay, but it's the dichotomy here is that if you hear broader concepts, people say that political stability is a nice thing. You need to have political stability for, let's say, reforms, for economic development and stuff like that. But on the other hand, they also say that, okay, but you also need to have a strong opposition in a democracy. A strong, if you look at the US democracy, it's good that both the houses keep on, swinging the presidency and stuff like that. But I see so in a multi-party system like India, I see a dichotomy here in that you can not have both at the same time. You cannot have a strong opposition and political stability at the same time. Either you'll have like a BJP or a Congress dominating the field and a weak opposition, or if you have a strong opposition, then you'll see a coalition era where the government can fall anytime and stuff like that. So how do you resolve this dichotomy?
I, I would not, very respectfully, I would not fully agree with what you're saying. Um, A, today across the world, you have multi-party systems. There is no serious, realistic two-party democracy anywhere in the world, even in the US or the United Kingdom. A ruling party getting a big majority and an opposition having limited numbers has been quite often an aberration in Indian democracy. You had that challenge in 2014, you had that challenge in 2019. But in 2024, you once again saw the opposition strengthening itself, and now you have an official opposition party in the Lok Sabha because you require 1/10 of the members to be officially called an opposition party. So, uh, and in most states of India, if you look at state politics in India, in most states of India, there is an official opposition party. Remember, the real contestation of politics in India is at the state level. You look at most states of India, there is more or less a bi-party competition. Most states of India. When you bring that bi-party competition nationally, what happens is it becomes a multi-party competition because the two parties in contest in a particular state are not necessarily the same across the country. So when they all come together at the national level, you have more than two parties, or you have a situation like now where the two major parties, the BJP and the Congress, between them account for only 333 of the Lok Sabha members. 240 in BJP, 99 in the Congress. So together, there are only 333 of the members, which means in the Lok Sabha today, 221 members belong neither to the Congress nor to the BJP. So when you collate all that nationally, you have that particular challenge. But then I would say that over time, India has seen one party dominant systems, initially the Congress, and now some people believe it's moving towards a BJP dominant system. But I would believe that the strength of Indian democracy is the fact that no party in India can take our voter for granted. This is our greatest strength.
Okay.
And we must say that to the credit of Indian democracy and to the sagacity of the Indian voter, who does not allow any party to take them for granted. You see.
Gotcha. And looking at the Lok Sabha elections, and now we have a lot of, let's say, a 30,000 feet view. Now Haryana has happened, Delhi has happened, Maharashtra has happened. So do you see that self-correction in the BJP, RSS, or whatever thing happening, or do you think that it's again too early to say that BJP has reflected upon the 2024 elections and has gone in the right direction?
See, in some of our writings, by our I mean uh, my writings with some of my Lokniti colleagues, one article which we came up with about the 2024 elections, we called that election representing a diversity dividend. See, that election represented the diversity in this country.
Mhm.
If you look at north, south, east, west of India, you have a diversity of verdicts within a region. You take North India, Jammu and Kashmir, one verdict, Himachal Pradesh, another verdict, Punjab, a third verdict, Haryana, a fourth verdict. You come down south, Telangana, one verdict, Andhra, one verdict, Tamil Nadu, one verdict, Kerala, one verdict, Karnataka, one verdict. Now,
Yep.
I call this the diversity dividend. Political parties get a diversity dividend. The voter of India has given a diversity dividend. And those of us who are familiar with finance, a dividend is something you encash. See, when I get a dividend, I encash that dividend.
Okay.
And my argument is what is happening in the state assembly elections is an encashing of that dividend. The Haryana result, the Jharkhand result, the Maharashtra result, the Jammu and Kashmir result, the Delhi result, all these are encashment of that diversity dividend that was seen in this country. Now, undoubtedly, and this is something accepted by the BJP also, that result was a setback for them because you fell from 302 seats to 240, and even the alliance fell by quite a number. But then I think what I have seen happening since the Lok Sabha election is the BJP has quickly gone ahead with a course correction. See, and this is the strength and vitality of the BJP that when a verdict like 2024 comes, you immediately do a course correction, you
Yep.
immediately relook at your strategy, and then you go and face the next election. On the other hand, you had an opposition which was very excited about its 2024 performance. And then I think took things for granted after that. Uh, uh, I have a thesis which I'm largely trying to propagate now. I'm saying after 2024 Lok Sabha elections, parties have been losing elections and therefore somebody has been winning elections. Because a party loses an election, the byproduct of a party losing an election is somebody else wins the election.
Okay.
The Congress lost the Haryana election, which was waiting for it to be given on a plate, either because of Jat factor or because of infighting in the party or because of overconfidence. And in the process, they gave the victory to the BJP. Similarly, in Maharashtra, the uh, Mahavikas Aghadi lost the election because the three parties saw each other as equals and divided seats among themselves and fought with each other and till the end were not settled. So they lost the election. Whereas on the other hand, the Mahayuti, interestingly, BJP made sure we contested a majority of the seats. The BJP did that and gave a smaller portion of seats to its the Shinde Sena and to the NCP headed by Ajit Pawar.
Gotcha.
So strategically, the Aghadi made sure we lost the election, and in the process, the Mahayuti won the election.
But how do you see the Delhi election then?
Delhi election for me also very clearly is Aam Aadmi Party lost the election. And the
Okay.
fact of the defeat of its big leaders demonstrates the fact that after 10 years, of being in power, and after 10 years of transforming yourself from what you called as an alternative to mainstream politics. That's what Arvind Kejriwal said we were, alternative to mainstream politics. And can we really touch our heart and say it was an alternative to mainstream politics, or was it an alternative within mainstream politics? That transformation happened.
Gotcha.
You fought on an anti corruption agenda. Your whole plank was anti corruption, and then see what happened to your own party. So, as I have said, writing about the uh, Delhi election, the Delhi election saw a huge credibility and trust deficit for the Aam Aadmi Party. There was a credibility deficit, there was a trust deficit. And and the AAP made sure that our whole plank was around the persona of Arvind Kejriwal. So,
Hmm.
in a sense, I would argue the AAP lost the election. And because the voter was very keen that the AAP needs to be told where it stands, the alternative then became the
The
choice of
BJP.
the voters.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so talking about these elections, the New Delhi seat and a lot of seats. So AIMIM has it's considered to be a front for the BJP and stuff like that. So as a political scientist, I wanted to ask how you feel about the first past the post system. So for the viewers, I would just like to clarify what first past the post system is. That in an election, if there are five candidates, whoever gets the maximum number of votes wins the election. While is but whereas there are other, France, Brazil, Iran, there are other options as well. So there's the two round system as well, where the two major parties then go on to a second round, and the second choice of the voter is also of the other parties is also put into consideration. So as a political scientist, do you do you see one system better than the other, or basically it's not your job to judge the two elections? How do you see the first past the post system in India?
See, a lot of people believed, and this is traditional European writing on this, uh, there was a belief that the first past the post system will invariably result in a two party or two major parties emerging within the polity. That the first past the post system, the way the votes get divided, you
Yep.
will, it has generally led to, they would argue, a first past the post, a two, largely two party system.
Gotcha.
And a lot of countries which have moved away from the first past the post system to a proportionate representation system have invariably seen multi party democracies and invariably the requirement of a coalition government. You look at Germany, you look at France, you look at Israel, you look at Scandinavian countries, you look across the region where you have now, um, leave out France, but all the other examples I took, where you have parliamentary systems and you have proportional representation, it has often led to the requirement or inevitability of coalition. But then let's remember, India always has been very distinct and different. In India, the first past the post system has not resulted in a two party system. And my argument there is why this has happened is the states have become the center of competition. The states of India, if I were to put it rhetorically, the states of India are the real center of politics of this country. See? And that's why I made the point earlier, in most states of India, the competition is largely between two parties or maximum three parties. Nationally, when you aggregate all these parties, it becomes more than two parties, becomes four, five, six parties. And therefore, I say the real arena for contestation is at the state level. The real focus of contestation is at the state level.
Okay.
So even if you take the national parties, even if you take the Congress party or the BJP, the Congress today has been reduced to having important pockets of influence across the country. The BJP from 2014 to now has really expanded its political footprints. 2014 election, they largely won in North India, Central India, and West India. In 2019, they expanded that footprint to East India and Northeast India.
Okay.
In 2024, they were hoping it would expand to South India. But that did not happen because South India still has its own, each of the states in South India has their own distinct nature of politics. So, given that factor, I would still say the first past the post system has been effective in India because the state is the focus of competition. And for me, there is only one important test for me for a first past the post system. If you look at the Lok Sabha elections today, more than half the seats are won by more than 50% of the.
Okay.
Yeah. If you see Vidhan Sabha elections, there too you will find more than half the seats are won by 50% of the vote. And for me, that is the true test of the success of the first past the post system, where at the state level, the real players in the competition are two or three. And it's among those two or three that more than 80 to 85% of the vote gets divided. If you look at state assemblies, the first party and the second party more often than not get more than 70% of the vote, the first and the second party. Many a time, much more than that. It's the balance which gets then divided among the smaller parties. And so for me, I would believe the first past the post system has proved effective in our country. And I would believe if you move from the first past the post system to any proportionate representation system, even a minor movement towards a proportional representation system, you will be opening the floodgates for the necessity of coalition governments. You will not be able to form up government with a single party. That would be a natural byproduct of a proportional representation system. And some people feel it's a good idea. You see, let's also respect that factor. There are a lot of people who feel that a coalition represents the authentic diversity of India. And if that were to be the case, so be it, is what a lot of people would argue.
Yeah. So that actually, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And thank you for that. The final question that I had is you have also done extensive work in teaching, like education and innovation and education. And I love to talk about public policy. And I've talked to people about judicial reforms, bureaucratic reforms, but educational reforms is some of a vague kind of a reform. People don't exactly know what the problem is, what are the possible solutions, what other countries are doing for solving these problems. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to end with asking you what is the current state. So I think we are both the products of the Indian education system, different times, but still Indian education system, the NCRT, CBSE thing. So where do you think the current education system is in India, and how do you think can remote modules, learning, AI, can that put some, can that help with the quality of Indian education, let's say?
You're right. You represent one generation of learning. I represent another generation of learning. It's now 43 years that I have been uh, in the whole uh, task of teaching learning. And in these 43 years, more than 20, 25,000 students have allowed me to learn with them in their classroom.
Wow.
I don't think I have taught anybody. They have been part of my learning process also in the last. So, what I'm going to share with you now is not what I learned, but is not what my students learned, but what I learned with my students. You see,
Okay.
what I learned because of my students. Point number one, I think education requires the learner to be at the center of the process. Who is this education for? Are we asking ourselves whether the learner really is benefiting from what we are doing with them? Today, we talk of outcome based education, where I don't ask myself, what did I teach today? But I ask myself, what dialogue did I have today? And what is the learning outcome for my learner? It's not about what I taught in the class today. It is about what we collectively learned in the classroom today. So, my point number one, there needs to be a mindset change among all stakeholders, among teachers, among students, among managements, among policymakers. And when I was helping Karnataka government as the chairman of the drafting committee of the youth policy,
Yep.
we came up with a slogan for higher education and school education also, which was learner first, learner always. What should be the goal of higher education? Learner first. Whenever I ask myself whether some change should be brought about, should I answer the question by saying, is the learner benefited by this? Have I involved the learner in this decision? The learner first, learner always. Today, when I dialogue with faculty, I ask them this question.
Mhm.
And it's quite an embarrassing question, which I ask myself also. Why should my student come to my classroom? Is there something I'm doing in the classroom which will benefit him or her, which they cannot find in any book or any website? Otherwise, why should they come? One of my students once asked an American professor a question. Is attendance compulsory in your class?
Yeah.
And that professor was an Indian origin professor. He looked at the boy and says, I remember I also did my undergraduate education in India. So I know where that question is coming from. But then he went on to say, attendance is not compulsory in my class. But tomorrow the student can't come and ask me, your question paper was too tough. Because my question paper is based on what I did in the classroom. Don't come back and tell me my assignment was too tough. Because you cannot get that assignment answered by ChatGPT, because ChatGPT also can't answer my question. Unless you have attended my class, you will not be. So I ask faculty today, can you touch your heart and give the same answer? That what I am doing in the classroom today, you cannot get in any one textbook. That's why you need to come to my class. My class has a dialogue where you all can participate and develop your skill. Is that happening in our, unless that happens in higher education, if I can put it very cynically,
Mhm.
today people many often do their higher education to postpone their unemployment. I'm being very pessimistic in that regard. Can I transform that by making sure my class dialogue is such that my boy or a girl at the end of 3 years, 4 years feels equipped to be able to take on the professional world? Am I really focusing on my learning outcomes? And my final point on that, can we, can we, can we reduce the clutches of politics over higher education?
Mhm. Mhm.
Can those from higher education take decisions for higher education?
But
Today, states are fighting, we want to control higher education. Center is saying, we want to regulate higher education. My appeal to both is, neither of you regulate higher education. Let the regulation of higher education be left to those who understand higher education. I have been a vice chancellor myself, but I understand today a lot of those occupying that position have got it because of political preference. So you don't get the highest office because of your skills and capacities, but you get it because whom you are close to. I'll just give you an example.
Mhm.
Many years ago, the Karnataka higher education minister issued an order that every vice chancellor should take at least 4 hours of classes per week. A vice chancellor should teach 4 hours per week. A newspaper asked me, "Will you like to write an article on this?" I said, "Yes." And what did I write? I said, "This is a great idea that vice chancellor should take classes 4 hours a week."
Yep.
But I said, the problem is elsewhere. You appoint people as vice chancellors who have stopped taking classes as professors itself. So why will they start taking why will they start taking classes as vice chancellors when they have stopped taking classes many years ago? Because they have been more busy uh, finding their political routes to be able to become vice chancellors. And then I quoted in that examples of vice chancellors who spent the first 1.5 hours of every day in their laboratories and then went to their offices. Because they said our job first is to be good researchers and teachers. That's my primary job. Administering a university is also my job, but my primary role is that of a teacher.
Yep.
So for 3 years, when I was a vice chancellor, my office used to open at 10:30.
Okay.
But my classes in the university used to start at 9 o'clock. So what would I do? Every day from 9 to 10, I used to take class.
Okay.
Because my office is opening at 10:30. So I was constantly in touch with all students because I was taking class and I enjoyed taking class. Right from 2009, when I have administrative responsibilities, I've been pro vice chancellor for 13 years and vice chancellor for 3 years. There is not a week which has passed when I have not taken classes. And I don't take the excuse that my administration keeps me too busy to take classes. Now, do we allow education to be run by educationists? Do we allow education to be run by those who have a investment? By investment, I don't mean financial investment, but
Yeah.
who have an academic investment in knowledge sharing and knowledge growing. So for me, these are the 2, 3 points.
Yeah. So maybe rethinking how we teach.
I mean, classroom is today a space for learning and not a space for teaching.
Yeah.
Today, I'm not teaching. I don't go into my class and say, today I'm going to teach you. I go into a class and say, today we are all going to dialogue about. Because who is learner number one in the classroom?
You. Gotcha.
If I don't go in with that mindset, it will continue to be teaching.
Okay.
So, do we make it exciting for our learner in the classroom? I often ask this question. Do people run to the class and walk back to their homes or walk to the class and run back to their homes?
Wow.
Do you walk to your class and run to the home or run to the class and walk to the home? I don't give any third or fourth option.
Yeah.
And then I ask faculty, do you run to the class and walk to the home or walk to the class and run to the home? And I tell
Yeah.
them, if you walk to the class, how will students run to the class? You set the mood. You set the mood as a faculty.
Your colleagues might not like you, sir. I'm just being honest here. Yeah. But yeah. Um, on that note, sir, I would just like to thank you for coming on the show. I know you have to run, and I hope I can get you back on the show. And it was a very, very great experience. So yeah, thank you for coming on the show.